Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about transfer techniques onto fabric. Now, if you've been doing paper jelly printing, you'll probably know about transferring from magazines and things. I'm more interested in transferring marks and particular things that I've drawn myself. So what I'm going to do is run through the basics, showing you these particular two examples being developed. I've got some other examples which I've done, and they're all about personalised marks, making something which isn't necessarily copying from a photo or words on a page. So if you're like me and you like to make your own marks and express yourself personally, this could be something that you're interested in. Drawing lines on a scrap piece of paper with my cheap and cheerful oil pastels. This is preparation for my transfer print. As you can see, per usual, I'm just interested in some loose marks. And in a second, I'll show you how we do this. Is that it really doesn't matter what colour crayon you use. It's really about the material in the crayon. In this case it's an oil pastel, because that's going to form the resist on my plate, and that's a critical thing. It's irrelevant what colour it is. So if you can try this with an oil pastel. You can try it with a wax crayon. I think the oil pastels, in my experience, work a little bit better. But really, it's a matter of giving it a go. And I must say that these were the cheapest oil pastels that I could find in my local art supply shop. So it's not something you need to spend a lot of money on. If you've got something at home, either an oil pastel or a wax crayon, even a lithographic pencil, well worth giving it a try. I'm putting down a really thin layer of paint, and I can tell already this is too much paint. So I've got my trusty cloth off the side where I'll be taking the excess paint off. I'm going to keep rolling. Now again, this is still too thick. You want a really thin layer of paint for this stage. I'm just using a plain acrylic paint. I have not put any textile medium in, although that certainly is something you can do if you want to. Alright, so you can see this is very, very thin. You can probably thin it out even a little bit more. So I'm going to take my piece of paper with the pattern on it. Here's my piece of paper with a pattern. You can see it's got some print on it that may or may not come off as well. Turn it over, and the trick here is to rub really lightly, and I mean really lightly, barely touching the paper, and only for a few seconds. And you will see when I pull it off, you can see all those lines, and that's from the wax crayon. It's retained that paint. Now, the thing now, which seems counterintuitive, is to let that plate dry completely. I want every last skerrick of moisture out of it. This is really critical to the transfer process. So I'm assuming this will take 10 to 15 minutes, and I will come and check it before then, just see how we're going. Now, it's been 10 minutes since I left this approximately, and this plate, it's hard to see in the light, but it's dry. Just double check, because this has to be completely dry. I can't stress that enough. It has to be completely dry for the transfer to even stand a chance of working. The next section is going to happen fairly quickly. So it doesn't matter. Once this is dry, you can leave it if you've got other things to do and come back to it later. But you must be prepared to move quickly into the next stage. Before you do anything with this technique, you get organised. You need to have your fabric ironed and dry. I would choose as smooth a fabric as you can find. This is just a plain cotton. It seems very smooth. I've had some reasonable success with transferring on this. So that needs to be ready to go. The other thing I have prepped here, and you can see I've kept it in a plastic bag just to make things a bit easier for myself. This is some acrylic paint, and I have very deliberately mixed it with some textile medium because I just want it to be a little bit wetter, stay damp a little bit longer. That's quite important for this next step. So what I'm going to do, I'll just run you through it and then I'll demonstrate it. So I'm going to take this paint, I'm going to use my roller, spread it out over my dry plate, my completely dry plate. Then I'm going to put my fabric on top, and then I'm actually going to put a weight on the whole thing, and I'm going to leave it for an hour. And whilst this seems a bit extreme, what I have discovered is that it's a heck of a lot harder to do a transfer print onto fabric than it is onto paper. Part of that is to do with the smoothness or otherwise of the fabric, and also too that's why I want the fabric paint to be wetter so that when I put it onto the fabric it's got a much better chance of bonding. And what will happen is this layer will pick up all the paint underneath it, well that's the theory at least, and lift it up. So let's get organised. Again, a nice layer over the top, reasonably thick, not too thick, that's probably a bit too thick. I'm now going to take my piece of cloth, I'm going to put that on, I'm going to smooth this with my hands. This is really important. Whilst you have the pressure on top afterwards, you do need to make sure that all of your print is in contact with the plate while you're doing this. Just put that to one side. I've just got a piece of scrap paper. You don't want anything you put on top of this to get paint through it. Some more newspaper. You might want to press down onto the book, but the important thing is I'm putting a weight on top, and then I'm going to leave this for an hour, and then after an hour I will come back and just check how it's transferred. Right, well it's been just over an hour, so I'm going to unpack all of this and see how my transfer print went. Fingers crossed. Well, I'm really happy with this one. It's one of the better ones I've done. You can see the original print was in the green, and I had that funny light orangey colour that picked it up. There's a few areas where there's a little bit of white, but I think that's actually from some of the paint that was already mixed in with the orange, so just poor mixing on my part. I'm doing some work at the moment that relates to the theme of gardens, so I just thought I'd do some leaf shapes and see how they turned out. I'm quite happy to have small pieces of fabric that I can use in my project. I don't need a big piece of fabric at this stage, so it'll be good to see how this works out. And I am just giving my plate a bit of a clean. I think some of the marks that came out last time were light coloured paint, and I just want to avoid having another colour of paint on my plate that might distract from the transfer itself. Again, taking my leaf pattern and gently putting it on my plate, and again try and make sure you go right to the edge. Nothing more frustrating than missing part of your pattern, but no more than that really. And again, I'm really happy with this. You can see the resistors worked really well. So again, I'm going to leave this to dry. But one of the things I notice, I'm not really happy with some of these edges. There's a bit of paint, so I might just like quickly try with a cotton bud and dab up some of that resist, which isn't where I wanted. So again, as I did in the previous one, I'm going to leave this for about 10-15 minutes until it's dried, and then I'm going to come back and look at it, and I will do the next layer of printing. Put some of this orange paint mixed with textile medium over the top. I have actually put a little bit more paint in, so it's a slightly brighter version than the last one. The reason why I'm doing this is fairly straightforward. I just want to have a nice contrast to the paint I've already used, which was a burnt umber. So this is like a cadmium orange. It is a bit paler than straight from the tube. Let's get this spread out. Again, make sure you've got a good coverage over everything. It's just using the tail end of the piece of fabric I've already used, smoothing it down with my hand to make sure I get a really good contact, and then once again picking up my pieces of paper, grabbing my book, sort of pressing down to make sure there's a good contact, and dumping my weight back on top. There we go. My leaves have transferred really nicely, and I'll look forward to using that in my next piece of work. If you've had some experience with this, or you're going to try it, please let me know how you go. I'll look forward to hearing from you. In the next video, I'll be talking about the impact that the types of pen or pastel or crayon you are using can have on your print. And I'll also be talking about selection of papers to draw on, and I'll bring you a few other tips that you might find handy.